Everybody, welcome back to another video with Shifty's 49ers Talk. Well, it is official. Week 1 of the preseason is in the books, and the scoreline definitely didn't go the way we wanted it to. The Denver Broncos ended up beating the 49ers 30-9. There are a lot of takeaways from this game, some good, some not so good, so we're going to dive into all of that. But first, let's run the intro. To do a very quick recap of the game. So the 49ers started the game with the ball, and immediately we had an opening drive scoring touchdown. Really well executed by Mac Jones. Of course, the highlight play was the 50-yard pass to rookie Jordan Watkins. The drive was capped off with a Patrick Taylor run, and he did a really nice job of bouncing out to the outside and running it into the end zone. Some really good blocking on that play. You follow up the next defensive series, or the first defensive series of the game for the Niners, and the defense looked pretty darn good. You could see Robert Saleh. Was great to see him on the sidelines, fired up, and the defense was looking aggressive early on, and that's something that you love to see. We forced a punt from the Denver Broncos. Then the 49ers had a really nice punt return from rookie Junior Burgett out of Montana, and it's probably the best punt return we've seen in 10-15 years or so, which is a little sad to think about because it wasn't even for a touchdown. However, we actually had really good field position to start the second offensive drive, but a player by the name of Nick Bonito for the Broncos, the very good edge rusher, he just destroyed that drive. However, it did lead to a punt from Thomas Morstead that was downed deep in the Broncos' own territory. After that, the Niners had a really good defensive play highlighted by Chase Lucas. He was sent on a corner blitz, and basically it forced Bo Nix running, scrambling in his own end zone, and has to throw it away. It's intentional grounding, which led to a safety. So at this point, we're still in the first quarter. The Niners are leading 9-0. And we wouldn't score again for the rest of the game, clearly. The Broncos then went on for the rest of the game to score 30 points, and it was a little bit ugly. So I think broad takeaways before we get into specific players and like maybe specific coaches. I think that, look, it was a great sign that on the first drive, you had a second team offense out there. The only true starter out there, I'm trying to think who it was. I don't even know if there was any true starters out there on the offensive side of the ball, and they were able to go down and score a touchdown against that Broncos defense, which wasn't fully stacked with their first team defense, but there were a lot of starters in there for Denver, so a great sign to start the game. What I also really liked was the second team defense, which was what we started our game with, did really well against the Broncos' first team offense. Didn't give up any points, forced the safety, and just generally speaking, like, stopped drives, and they played well. Guys flying around the field, making plays here and there. Wasn't really one or two guys who just dominated. It was everyone contributing and doing their jobs, which was excellent to see. Then everything kind of started falling apart from there. When Carter Bradley came in, the son of Gus Bradley, he was a complete disaster. The defense, then you had players coming in and out, some getting hurt, and we just were unable to stop Jarrett Stidham, the backup quarterback for the Denver Broncos. And Stidham just seems to play his best football against the Niners. If we think back to that awesome game against the Las Vegas Raiders where it went to overtime, 49ers did end up winning that game, but Jarrett Stidham was crazy good in that game. And, he is a kind of a journeyman, like, backup quarterback, but he played elite in that game, and I think he played really well in this game. The defense struggled the rest of the way. You end up giving up 30 points, but you also have to put some of that on the offense with multiple turnovers. Mac Jones throwing interception, Carter Bradley with a horrific, really bad interception, and you look at the fumble by Amir Abdullah, and a lot of these times here giving great field position to the Denver Broncos. So look, it's preseason, it's week 1. Nobody needs to overreact to anything too crazy. I don't even know if the 22 starters, you maybe had 2 or 3, 4 maybe out there. So, you don't want to dig, you don't want to read too much into what's happened. Of course, you're going to see defenses maybe playing a little bit more vanilla, all of that sort of thing. But overall, really good start by the 49ers, and that second team, basically the second team offense and second team defense, did a great job against a significant amount of first team starters for the Broncos. But after that, everything kind of just fell apart. So what I'm going to do next, guys, in this video is we're going to talk about the players whose stock has gone up, players whose stock has gone down, and then players who were just inconsistent in the game. I think that this will be a list that a lot of 49er fans will agree with when it comes to the stock up. And the first guy to me who sticks out here is Marquise Siegel. So he was playing in the secondary at safety, and this guy was everywhere. Unfortunately, he did leave the game with a knee injury. However, I don't think it's expected to be, it's not a serious injury. Maybe he misses a week or so he probably misses the game against the Las Vegas Raiders, which is not ideal because as a rookie, you want them to get as many snaps in preseason just to get some of that experience as we head into the regular season. But overall, he played really, really well, did Siegel. Flying all over the place, really good with his tackles, knew where to be, and just looked super comfortable and confident in this defense. And look, I'm not going to say and crown him as a starting safety week 1, but I do think he played really well and was super, super impressive. And that's great to see because especially at the safety position, we have a ton of question marks, and I believe that the competition for the starting safeties is wide open, and Siegel really did a good job of putting his name in there to be a starter. Again, a bummer that he had to leave the game because of the injury, but he was just tackling everywhere. He was getting up to the line of scrimmage. He was good in coverage. Remember that Siegel has a 4.37 40. He's the fastest safety in the draft this year, and he showed it just flying around. The next guy that I think we have to talk about for stock up is Chase Lucas, the defensive back. And we talked about it earlier in the video. He basically forced Bo Nix to have to do the intentional grounding in the end zone, which led to a safety, which led to 2 points. You look also there, which I think was really impressive, is that he was flying around the field too. He was brought on a couple of different blitzes and also was able to get pressure, was able to make tackles near the line of scrimmage. He was able to do the job that he needed to do. I thought he had really good coverage a number of times. Yeah, there were times where it was a good pass and a good catch that beat his good coverage. But overall, I think he did a solid job, and he is absolutely making a case for himself to be on the 53-man roster. And Chase Lucas is also a very good special teams player, so that's going to really help him with regards to getting onto the roster. But I thought Chase Lucas, a little bit similar to Marquise Siegel, you could just see these guys flying all over the field, making tackles. There weren't any broken tackles, nothing like that. Like the assignments, it seemed like they knew where to be, when they needed to be there, which was really, really good. The next player that we're going to talk about for stock up is going to be Kalia Davis. Kalia Davis was a later round pick a couple of years ago. He's been injured a lot, but I thought he was super impressive. When we talk about these young defensive tackles on the roster, in my opinion, he was the most impressive. He was getting push. He was able to fight through blocks. He had a sack in the game, and also against the run, I thought he was pretty solid. He wasn't getting pushed 4 or 5 yards down the field. At times he was eating up double teams. So I thought, Kalia Davis really, really impressed me, of all of the defensive tackles. In my opinion, he was the most impressive, especially when you factor in that he was going up against a bunch of starters on the Broncos defensive line. If Kalia Davis can stay healthy, that's really, really good for this team. Another player I want to talk about on the defensive side is Tatum Bethune, the backup linebacker. Now, he came in and I thought he looked really, really solid. I think he did leave the game with an injury, so hopefully it's nothing too serious, but I thought he was super impressive. Again, he just seemed to know where he needed to be when he needed to be there, and he seemed to know his assignments. I believe when he's out there, he has the green dot on the helmet, so he's kind of making the defensive calls. But I thought he was super impressive. Really good to see him in his second season just take a step and Even though Saleh has a slightly different scheme to Nick Sorensen, Saleh calls it much better and it puts players in better position. So I think that's helping Tatum Bethune as well. So he gets to play in a similar defense to last year, but also one that's going to put him in a lot more positions to succeed. And I think he's making the most of that opportunity. If we move on to the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to say Junior Burgeon, and this is actually more of a special teams thing, I guess, with that punt return. He does have some value. I thought he was out there playing receiver, didn't do a whole lot that I could remember in terms of the passing game, but then again, when you have Carter Bradley and Tanner Mordecai, who after being cut has just come back a few hours earlier, I mean, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to make any kind of impact there. But overall, stock up, because we need a dynamic player when it comes to special teams. If we have a weapon who can, when it comes to punt returns, if you're either forcing the other team to have to punt the ball higher but shorter, that's just naturally going to help you out with your field position. But when he does get opportunities to return it, I think he just seems like an electric player with the ball in his hands. And I do also think that, when you look at Junior Burgeon, that he's a guy who, if Shanahan can scheme up plays, where he can get the ball with a little bit of room to work with, that would be awesome. Kind of reminds me, okay, so I think it's a little bit similar to how we would have used Deebo Samuel in some ways, where if you remember so many times where it'd be snap, quick pass to Deebo and let him try and do something, let him do Deebo things. Is Burgeon going to be Deebo Samuel? Most likely not, but if you can get him the ball with a little bit of room to work with, that would be exciting on the offensive side. I thought Connor Colby, the rookie 7th round pick out of Iowa, I thought he was pretty solid in the blocking game. I saw a number of times where the Niners had good positive runs, and it was Connor Colby who was 5, 6, 7 yards down the field right there with the running back. So you really like to see that. I thought he was solid. He's someone with good versatility, so that could help his case to make the roster. But to me, he was someone who stood out as, I think, being pretty good on the offensive side. This is one I put down here, but maybe he shouldn't be here. But I put Demarcus Robinson, and the reason why I put Demarcus Robinson is that he looked so comfortable in this offense, and there was a number of times where he just seemed like he's going to be a very reliable target. Is Demarcus Robinson going to have like 1,000 yards? No, but I think it's going to be so many times where it's 2nd and 10 and they get a 7-yard, 8-yard pass to Robinson. So it makes it a very manageable 3rd down. I think you're going to see him in key situations. We of course have 3rd and Jawan, but I think Robinson's going to be a guy when it comes to red zone situations, maybe 3rd, 4th down situations. He just seems like such a reliable guy that you can count on him in big situations. So I like Demarcus Robinson. Now let's move to the stock down, and there's a number of players here we have to talk about. I think first off, Carter Bradley, he was dreadful. I'm not saying that I'm better than him. Obviously I'm not, but his performance was very, very poor, to say the least. And if he's on this roster in the next week or so, I'd be surprised. I think the only reason why he might stay on the roster is Gus Bradley is like, hey, Kyle, give him another chance. But yeah, the interception was dreadful. Just didn't look confident at all. And look, he hasn't been with the team very long, so maybe I'm probably being a bit too harsh on the guy, but he just didn't seem like he belonged in the NFL in this situation. Yeah, look, maybe if we signed him back in, in April and he's had months, that would, I'm sure, help him out and he'd be a lot more familiar, but yeah, just not good at all. I thought Spencer Burford was not good as well. At left tackle, knock on wood, nothing happens to Trent Williams, of course, this season. But if we have to go to Spencer Burford, that's going to be a disaster, especially when you play those teams that have just dynamic edge rushers. That's going to lead to a lot of bad times, I think, for 49er quarterbacks. And yeah, he got beat a number of times, didn't look comfortable at all back there. So yeah, not great for Spencer Burford. If we move to the defensive side of the ball, stock down, I'm going to put Nick Martin. And I think he played a little bit better towards the end of the second half. But when I saw him in the first half and the beginning of the third quarter, he looked to me, he looked lost out there. Like there were too many things happening and he wasn't really sure where to go. And I think that what was probably happening was maybe he was just too much in his head, or instead of just, and it's going to take him time. And when I have some of these players who are stocked down, I'm not saying that we have to write them off, that they're no good and they're not going to be, a good player. It's preseason week 1. But I thought Nick Martin looked a little bit lost out there. I think as the game went on with more reps, that helped him out. I think playing, preseason week 2, I think Nick Martin needs to play at least a half of football, if not maybe 3/4. And then I think preseason week 3, I'd like to see him play the entire game just to get those reps, to get that familiarity of, just knowing kind of where to be and seeing different offenses, getting the experience where he can will be huge for Nick Martin. Stock down, I was kind of hoping for a little bit more. I thought Tatum Bethune was significantly better than him. D. Winters was, Luke Gifford was. So yeah, it's not looking great right now, but again, it's super early, so not time to freak out. Jason Pinnock was someone who I wasn't super impressed with. He wasn't out there for that long, but he had an opportunity to make a really not incredibly difficult tackle, which would have stopped the running back for maybe a yard or so gain, but then he completely whiffed on it, and running back ended up getting 7-8 yards on that play, if not more. I'm trying to think of the exact how that play exactly finished. But the point being is that he missed that tackle pretty badly, and that's been a knock on him. His, run defense hasn't been amazing. He's super athletic, he's really fast, he's not afraid to hit. The only problem is he didn't hit the running back at all. So there's things to work on with Jason Pinnock. I would like to think, I'm not going to say that, look, he can't start, he can't play, but I'd like to see him next week in preseason week 2 against the Raiders. I'd like to see him step up and make more plays for the 49ers, just because I have a feeling that come week 1, the Niners are going to lean a little bit more on that veterancy that he has compared to a Marquise Siegel, for example. So you'd like to see him make some plays, positive plays. Last but not least is going to be Alfred Collins. Now, I think with Alfred Collins, I don't think he played very well. I don't think he wasn't dreadful by any means, but there's maybe I'm judging him a bit too harshly, but being a second round pick, 43rd overall, you'd like to have seen maybe a little bit more. Again, it's a very small sample size. It's one game. And I don't think he was dreadful, but a number of times he was playing with super high pad level. He was getting pushed down. A number of runs that Denver had where they picked up 6-7 yards and Alfred Collins is getting pushed back all that way. That is not what we need from Alfred Collins. And maybe we're putting too much on him. Again, remember, he missed a lot of the OTAs and mini camps with an injury, so he's only really been practicing for the last few weeks, and we maybe should cut him some slack a little bit. But it's hard to, when I think we are going to have to count on him to play significant, meaningful snaps this season. And look, preseason week 1, I've said it probably 10 times already in this video, that with more time and with more reps and with more snaps, I do think that he'll get better. It's one of those things where it's going to take time transitioning to the NFL game, the speed, the nuance. There's a lot of responsibilities. He's playing in a different style defense. So, not like, red alert or anything like that. Not saying that he's a bust, it's over with, but I'd like to see him. What I want to see from Alfred Collins next week is to bounce back and improve. Then I want to finish this part of the video just talking about players who were up and down. So I think Mac Jones was a good example. That first drive, really, really good. Made a couple of nice throws, a perfect throw to Jordan Watkins. Then followed it up really completely unable to move the ball. Looked a little bit confused, you could say at times, also through the interception, which wasn't 100% on him, but it was not a good throw. And kind of to piggyback off of that, another player inconsistent, Jordan Watkins. When you look at the first drive of the game, he has a 50-yard catch, and, he had another catch too, which was quite good, where he caught it and 2 Bronco defenders basically hit him right away. He was able to hold on to the ball and hold on to the catch. It only went for maybe 6-7 yards, maybe 6 yards, but that can be the difference between extending a drive and not. So I thought that Jordan Watkins had some good moments, but on that Mac Jones interception, the route that Jordan Watkins, it's like he got to the top of his route, it was going to come back, and it's like he just stopped caring. He didn't even try and play defense. Sometimes receivers have to do that. If you and your quarterback are not always going to be on the same page, and you kind of got to help your quarterback out there, where when Mac Jones made that throw, I think Jordan Watkins needs to come back more aggressively to the ball and even just try and swat it away so it's not an interception. Couple of times I think we saw that throughout the game. Again, I'm not going to be super concerned about it because look, he made a really nice catch for 50 yards. He made another nice catch in traffic, and I think he is ultimately going to be, when players are healthy and out there, wide receiver 4 or 5 maybe. So don't want to be overly critical, but I think he is somewhat a victim of his own success with regards to the training camp practices, where he's gotten just such great reviews that I think maybe my expectations were higher than what they should have been. So I'm not saying that he's stocked down, but just saying he's inconsistent. Another player I think was a little bit inconsistent was CJ West. Again, similar story to Jordan Watkins, where I think he's a victim of his own success in training camp, where we've just heard such rave reviews, in training camp practices against 49ers and then against the Broncos, and I think I probably put too much expectations on him. I thought he was solid. He did have a couple of nice times where he, broke through the offensive line, so I think there's a lot of room for growth there and a lot of positive things to take from it. But there were also some situations that didn't go so great, and that's absolutely to be expected, not only by a rookie 4th-round defensive tackle, but by any rookie. And remember, these guys are playing without a lot of the starters out there, which I think would help them significantly, like having Nick Bosa, Michael Williams, Bryce Huff out there. That's going to help guys on the defensive line to put them in better situations. But in terms of inconsistency, the last guy, super quick, Darrell Luter Jr. He's someone who's been on the team for a couple of years, and he had that really nice pass breakup where they were looking for Cortland Sutton in the end zone. I thought he probably had a good chance to intercept it, but Sutton and Luter, both big guys, they kind of went up for it, incomplete. So that was a really good pass breakup in the end zone. But then he follows it up with the touchdown pass where the tight end for the Broncos, Krull, I think his name was, there was no defender within 15-20 yards. And there's a funny picture kind of circulating on Twitter or X that is showing that. I think it's Chase Lucas and someone else is looking at Darrell Luter being the play hasn't even finished yet, and they're like, what are you doing? The guy is wide open by 10 yards. So up and down performance there. But look, it's going to happen, and we can't read too much into this. There's so many variables. It's what are the Broncos throwing at us? You're talking about second stringers playing with third stringers, playing with guys who maybe, fourth string. There's a lot of different things. It's hard to pinpoint, what are the causes, but there is information there, and I think the Niners will take a lot of information from this game. Something that I just kind of want to finish off on is the coaching. So I really did like the job that Robert Saleh. It's so good to see him back out there because he's so animated and he's really, he knows what he's doing. I mean, he should do by now. He's been a defensive coordinator since 2017, and he's been a really good defensive coordinator for a long time now. So he knows what to do with his players. And I think that the Niners defense feeds off of that kind of energy. When you had a D'Amico Ryans or Robert Saleh, that's when we were playing our best. Steve Wilkes, Nick Sorensen, respect them, but they were very just calm and, in their demeanor. Whereas I think the players even feed off of a guy like a Robert Saleh or a D'Amico Ryans. And it's great to have him back, and he just knows what he's doing. And you see a lot of different looks, a lot of, different formations, and you're seeing blitzes from the cornerbacks, and you're seeing stunts on the defensive line, and a lot of different, movements and what have you, which forces the offense to have to think a lot more, which I think is good for the Niners. If we look at the offense, clearly it struggled significantly outside of that first drive. Clint Kubiak was calling the plays. It wasn't Kyle Shanahan, but also Clint Kubiak's working with Carter Bradley and working with Tanner Mordecai and what have you. So, I'm not going to write off Clint Kubiak as an offensive coordinator. I think it's a really good experience for him to get this opportunity because he's not going to get these chances in the regular season. So, and it helps his development too. And maybe he can help in terms of the game plan, and he can help, Shanahan out, and maybe in situations that he can see things maybe a little bit differently than Shanahan, that could have a positive impact. So didn't go great. Not a lot of, just not a lot of positives offensively, but overall just wanted to kind of give Clint Kubiak a mention. And then Brant Boyer, special teams, really nice punt return from Junior Burgeon. We did have the punt coverage, one that wasn't great, and the Broncos had a pretty decent return. But, outside of that, look, those things happen. And I mean, I'm sure the Broncos are probably talking about, they're like, who the hell is this Junior Virgin? And he's having a big return against us. Do we panic about special teams? No, we don't. I like Brant Boyer. He's another guy who just seems like very animated, pumped up. And I think when it comes to defense and special teams, those players really feed off of that energy. So overall, I think the coaching, look, you lose 30-9, but it's preseason, and who knows what kind of looks we were trying to go for or what Denver was going for. So there's a lot of nuance to it, but it's exciting to have 49ers football back and to see these players in pads, in formations, different situations. Love to see it. And I think we're going to see a lot more starters. I think we'll be playing against the Raiders in week 2 of preseason. And of course, there's a lot of guys potentially coming back from injury this week. So that would be some really good news. But overall, you look at this game and yeah, it's preseason. I can't even remember the scores of the games in last year's preseason. So it's a big deal right now, and there is things to take away from it. But in 2 months' time, we're going to forget this game probably even happened. So, but I just wanted to give you guys a review, kind of recap of the game, my thoughts on how individual players did. So I hope you enjoyed it. I am going to leave it there. We're going to have some videos coming out through the week as well. I should be streaming the week 2 of the preseason game next Saturday. So hope you guys can catch me there. I'm going to head on out of here. But before I do, I'm going to say 2 things. The butt counts, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.